What's going on, everybody? We're back once again with another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. It is Throwback Thursday, November 9th. Believe it or not, you're kidding me. It's 8 days away from my mom's birthday. Shout out my mom. Happy birthday, LT, early.
Happy early B-Day to her, man.
8 days away. We're almost 7 days away. More importantly, though, sorry, Mom. Let's talk about AEW today. I'm stoked about it. It's going to be fun. Dynamite was outstanding. And stop scaring me with the light thing, Shad. You know,
it's not
I'm
Halloween.
afraid of scary stuff. It's post-Halloween, dude. Oh, freaking me out over there.
He's still getting the stink paint off.
We've got AEW Dynamite that we're going to break down top to bottom for you guys. And then my favorite throwback topic we've had in a while, and that's a big thing to say considering I like them all. The Montreal Screwjob. Just an absolute classic. Anthony Ricciardi, our head of opinions. How are you doing today? Good to see you. Let me introduce my co-hosts.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. You and I had a marathon last night, filming a couple Take It to the Tables. And now we're at this again. It was a quick week, and Dynamite happened last night, and today is actually the 26th anniversary to the day the Montreal Screwjob happened.
Absolutely, and can't wait to get into the Screwjob topic. But I do have to. You mentioned Take It to the Table yesterday, and if you count that as 2 shows, which it was, I'm looking at 6 shows in 2.5 days here. Which I'm excited about. It's been a blast, and Take It was a blast, as always, as was the Wednesday show. But up next, we got all the way from the Tuesday Night Delight. Shad Huda, how you been, my friend?
What's good, guys? I'm doing well, man. It's been a long week for me with just working stuff, but doing well. Excited to talk about both AEW Dynamite, which was a very fun show and one of the most polarizing, historical moments in wrestling. So yeah, let's get into it.
100%. And I'm with you. We're gonna show a comment here from Anthony Manzano, our good friend. First, he said hi, and then he asked us, "Did you guys see Vince is selling 8.3 million of his stock of TKO, which is 30% of the company?" We did. And we don't have a heck of a lot to say about it. We're here to talk about the on-screen product and focus on what's happening on TV in the world of pro wrestling. I do know that this is one thing that's a huge news story, but we aren't the dirt sheet. We're the clean sheet. That's who we've always been here at Wrestling Republic. So we're going to stick to AEW Dynamite and Throwback Thursday, and that's my apologies, Anthony, but I do appreciate the comment. And when I say Anthony, I mean Manzano, not you.
No, I know what you're
already. I know. Anyway, let's dive into our first topic of the evening, which of course is our world champion, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. And Chaos isn't here to do the dance for us, but I mean my guy, Danny G, who I first saw at Rampage pre-All Out 2021 and was blown away by. To be honest, saw him at PWG with Carter. Daniel Garcia has something. And as soon as we really get to the spot where it's time to push him, I think he deserves a huge push. This matchup, I was excited about personally. Out of the gates, I think it's a blast. I think it's a fun matchup. And I love the idea of the amount of challengers just going after Max. It makes so much sense to me, and it makes him a better babyface champion than I've seen in a long time. The last thing in the world 1 year ago today, I thought I'd say live here on the show is that Maxwell Jacob Friedman as a babyface having a bunch of challengers would make a ton of sense. I wouldn't have seen any logic in anything other than a heel run for MJF personally. And what they've built here is really cool and fun. I enjoyed the match personally last night. Shad, I'm tossing it to you first. What'd you think of the opener?
I liked it a lot, man. I can't have a lot of negative things to say about Mr. Daniel Garcia. I've been a fan of him since I kind of learned about him in the landscape of AEW. And kind of what he was doing, like you said, on the indie circuit. I think he's one of the best bell for bell professional wrestlers in the landscape of pro wrestling. And I loved the talk that they had backstage between MJF and Daniel Garcia, kind of challenging him in a way, telling him, what am I going to get today? Am I going to get the sports entertainer or am I going to get the professional wrestler? And Daniel Garcia, with a lot of confidence, saying, you're going to get the professional wrestler, had a heck of a match. I mean, both of these guys are great professional wrestlers. And it, gets us back to the place where I'm hoping, as funny and great the little, dance he does and all that, I feel like he's a person that has so much passion and has so much, like, just a straight killer as a professional wrestler, where I want to kind of see that break off, and I want to get back to the root of what he was character wise. I love the initial story between him and the Jericho Appreciation Society, and when Danielson first came in and him kind of going through, do I want to be with these guys being sports entertainers, or do I want to be a professional wrestler like my idol? I want to see that legitimacy and that more serious of a character. He shows that he could do both, but I think the dancing and the funny part of it takes a little bit away from him for what he can be, and that could possibly be a future AEW champion in the next couple of years, a mid-card champion in the quicker aspect of the year. So, but all in all, I enjoyed it.
I totally agree, and especially with Daniel Garcia, I think it's been very impressive what he's been able to accomplish with the dancing thing. With that, you brought up the pro wrestler versus superstar storyline. Long-term storytelling we ask for often. He's doing it. I mean, right? When we get it, do we not give them their flowers, or do we give them their flowers? And I think Daniel Garcia deserves his flowers for that. Long-term storytelling. As far as this is concerned, I even look at something as simple as I mentioned earlier. Me and Carter attended the PWG show. The main event was him and Speedball Bailey, right? He came out, he danced, and then he was a pro wrestler for a half hour. You know what I mean? In an Iron Man match. And it was awesome. He was outstanding, and bell to bell in that setting, in that forum. His versatility and adaptability was just absolutely on display. There's no other way to quantify it when you really think and talk about Daniel Garcia. He can kind of do everything in a way. And it's funny because the initial criticism was, well, he's not entertaining. It was like, what now? Right? I mean, and I don't want to knock him back to Austin Theory, but I look at Austin Theory, and that's kind of what I thought about him. By comparison of the two, I take DG personally. That's just me. I'll take Garcia. But we got a couple comments really quick before I toss it to you here, Anthony. We've got, by the way, Anthony Manzano has just decided that he's siding with his fellow Anthony.
Even though I haven't said anything
on everything. Right before you get going, which this is the question I actually really want to toss to you, Anthony. Since the devil is attacking Maxwell, who do you think it might be?
I have a fantasy booking idea for this. I have not written it yet. I don't want to reveal the name yet. Clark, you know who it is because I mentioned it on Take It, but the article will probably come out before Take It. The person who I think it should be, would be shocking, to say the least. Clark, correct me if I'm wrong. That would be the name I gave you yesterday would be a shocking name.
More stunning than the prediction that I made, which was CM Punk. So think of it that way. Yeah. Take that one off the table. I'll give you one hint. That's it. Sorry.
So yeah, I think whoever's behind it is either trying to frame Max or to target Max. So they're targeting the people around him. They targeted Jay White. The reason for that was to frame Max. I don't think Jay White had anything to do with it, as far as them targeting him for I think it's always been Max. That's always been the target. As far as the MJF Garcia match, I have not been a huge fan of Garcia. I think he's good technically. I'm not a huge fan of his. I'm not a fan of Theory's either. I think Theory, I had a lot of interest in him when I saw him in Evolve. When this guy's got some talent. As he's gone on, he hasn't evolved, and I don't get too much into him. I do like that Max has so many people targeting him. That's one of those things that should happen in wrestling, because the old adage is when you're the champion, the target's on your back. Everyone wants your spot at the top. The problem is a lot of times they don't do that. So I like the fact that they're having multiple people target him. What I didn't like about this was kind of just booked out of nowhere. Of all the people targeting Max, he's got like a half a dozen people trying to get him. They don't get a title shot, but Daniel Garcia just gets a title shot pretty much out of nowhere. Like, I think that's something you could have built up to, not just, hey, by the way, Max is defending the title this Wednesday against Garcia. I don't think that was a smart move. I think you could have built to that. I was surprised that it opened the show. I really thought it should have closed it. But it was a solid match. You knew Max was going over. You knew there was no chance they were giving the belt to Garcia, especially with Full Gear, a week from Saturday. You knew that's where it was going, but I thought it was a solid match.
100%. I'm with you. And, yeah, I'm with you on a lot. I will say I do slightly disagree on the Daniel Garcia thing, only just because I think he's awesome, but that's neither here nor there. Now, we do have a comment I gotta show here. And Manzano said CM Punk.
That's not the name I have. That's the name Clark has.
That's the name I have. But while we're on the topic, I just want to make everybody aware. I said it first.
You did.
And if and when it happens, I am going to touchdown dance like Justin Jefferson on a breakaway. Like Jet Jefferson, I am going to dance on it. If this actually happens, it's probably worst case scenario for anybody that knows me.
You'll be dancing on your own, Clark.
I will be absolutely dancing on my own. I will be just dying laughing at the entire thing. But let's move on. Speaking of the world title scene.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got Swerve, Strickland. Mm-hmm. Many people over here on Wrestling Republic have tagged Swerve as not only a potential, but likely the next AEW world champion after MJF. And then we have Penta El Zero Miedo. Yes, one of my all-time favorites, Pentagon Jr. If neither here nor there, I enjoyed this match. It was delightful, as I expected. Swerve bell to bell is amazing. Prince Nana never gets old, seemingly, on television. Can't really get enough of him dancing. Just keep playing the music is one thing I would say about that. Anthony, how'd you like this match? What do you think the future is for Swerve and Penta / the Lucha Bros?
I really like Swerve. I think Swerve has absolutely stepped up to that next level, and I do think he's a future world champion. Whether or not he's the next one, I do think he's going to hold world title gold probably in 24 at some point. Going into this match, I thought it was going to be a solid match. I like Penta. But realistically, going into it, you're like, there's no way Penta wins this. Penta's not in a storyline with anybody. So you knew Swerve was going over. I mean, obviously Swerve's in a feud with Hangman, so it made sense. It was a solid match. I did think it was a little of an odd choice for Penta to go orange and black after Halloween, but I thought it was really cool gear, though, regardless. And I don't really remember if I've seen him wear that before. He may have. I may be forgetting, but I don't remember him wearing that particular gear. I thought it was a solid match. And, obviously the post-match fight with Hangman made sense. You're building to the rematch. And to me, it feels more like a legitimate grudge as opposed to the first one. The first one, they hinted at it, but there really wasn't a grudge there. Now I have an interest because of what they've done. So I'm looking forward to see Swerve and Hangman as the story progresses. They got one more Dynamite before Full Gear to build this up even more. So we'll see what happens.
100%. Yeah, I think you had great insight, especially on Penta as well, and the Lucha Bros there. We got a comment here from Anthony Manzano, and I appreciate you, Anthony, for reposting this one because I actually thought it was one that we'd want to get into. I know this is from the last segment, but my actual prediction is Jay White. He's been the devil the whole time. The guy's a manipulative SOB. He had Juice dress up as the devil and attack him to throw everything off.
Yeah.
That would make some sense.
I gotta be honest, not to get into what my fantasy book was.
We're not revealing it.
That's part of it, but I wouldn't have Jay as the guy behind the mask. Whether or not he's in on it, it's a fantasy book. I'm leaning that way.
I hear you. I still think it's a voice of the voiceless. Shad, what do you think about this one?
For the who is the
who is it?
The devil, the shaitan. I think, you know what? I don't think it's CM Punk. I think it's somebody that got in a fight with CM Punk.
Good.
Jungle Boy Jack Perry.
Ooh, I love that call.
I feel like it's gonna be somebody that's gonna be a surprise, and I feel like it's been long enough. The water is probably gone under the bridge at this point. Why not bring him back? He can kind of tell a story with it where he's, one of the pillars, and he wants an opportunity to take what Max has as a champ. And I mean, you could kind of create a different character with him being more of a darker, like more of a badass character. Kind of play off of how he was acting when he was mouthing off to the camera in the match he had at the All In. So I'm gonna go with Jungle Boy.
I like it. I like the Jungle Boy pick. So we've got CM Punk, Jungle Boy, and mystery pick Anthony, which we're not going to reveal because it's coming in an article, and that's the only thing.
Here's the thing. Realistically, and I've said it on here before, I think it probably is Jungle Boy. The fantasy one is who I think it should be for the maximum impact.
Or to be clear, yes.
Yes.
But we're not revealing that on air because you guys need to read the article.
Y'all need to read this man's articles. That's all we got to say.
The article. And speaking of shout outs, by the way, we got Yer from Big Fern, our good friend. Shotty is going crazy as usual.
Peace King.
And then me and Anthony got a shout out too from Big Fern.
Thank you.
Yeah, I knew I liked that guy. I knew he was the man, Shotty.
Fern, that guy, man. Salute to him.
Fern's that dude. There's no doubt about that. That's undeniable to say the least. But let's move on to our next topic of the evening, which of course is Samoa Joe, Keith Lee, and Joe vacates the belt. Did not see that coming. Huh? Like, what?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that myself.
Don't get it. I know. I got to touch the Shot directly here first, but Shot, break it down.
We could both talk on it because, all right, so let me say this first and foremost. Match, great. You got Keith Lee, you got Samoa Joe, you got what Big E say, big meaty man slapping meat. Pause. Like, it was definitely a heavyweight showdown. So that's not the problem. The problem is what happened after, and that's what I want to talk about is him vacating the title. I said this on Tuesday. It's trash. It's basura. I don't like it. It makes no sense. The logic of it makes no sense because you think about it like this. He wants to get rid of this ROH TV title because he has bigger aspirations and he wants to go for the big gold that will be AEW World title off of Max, right? Max has a ROH title also. So why can't you have two titles as well? Like, it doesn't make sense to me at all. And Like, why? Like, if you're gonna vacate it, like, find a way to let Keith Lee win the belt or somebody else on ROH win the belt. It makes no sense. Like, vacating titles for just the sake of vacating it, not injured, nothing, is dumb. Like, and it makes the legitimacy. Like, I feel like they haven't even. There was a lot of meat on the bone with Samoa Joe being in ROH historically and being a champ. Well, that TV show needs stars and they need meaningful feuds to book it. They don't book that show like it's a weekly television show at all. I said it before, I'm gonna say it again. It's just AEW Dark and Elevation on a paywall with some ROH talent instead of random indie people trying out and people that aren't on Dynamite and Collision. Like, that's all it is. Sprinkled with a couple nostalgic people like the Young Bucks and Samoa Joe and Mark Briscoe and whatnot. But there's like nothing to the show and there's nothing to the belt. It's super dumb. I did not like it at all. Like, what was a very, very good show last night, this knocked it down a peg for me.
I totally agree. And for future reference, I do now know that someone very good when Shad goes bilingual. I'm just saying. When Shad goes bilingual, you're in trouble. Basura, I agree. And I think just nonsensical to say the least. It's the one blemish on what was otherwise an amazing 2 hours. And 2 hours that felt like they flew by in relation to other recent weeks, which is interesting. But to your point, if you're going to point out one thing on the show that I would just not do, it was the post-match segment. What was the thought process? In the words of myself, what are we doing here? Anthony, I gotta ask you though. Yeah. You said you had thoughts before.
Yeah.
What are your feelings on this one?
Okay, going into this to me, I've always been a big fan of Joe and Keith Lee, so I really look forward to seeing this match, and they delivered. But what happened post-match ruined all of that, because this made no sense. Joe is the longest reigning TV champion in Ring of Honor's history. When you have long title reigns, it's supposed to bring prestige to the title, and when someone beats you, it's supposed to make you. And Joe's excuse of going, I want bigger aspirations, that doesn't require you to relinquish the title. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you have both the Ring of Honor TV title and the TNT title at the same time? And you called yourself the King of TV? That doesn't require you to throw that belt down. And a couple days ago, I said that Ben posted a reel where I pretty much kind of went on a rant on Tony Khan's Ring of Honor. And essentially what I said was that Tony Khan's Ring of Honor is the equivalent of WWE's ECW. Yeah, you own the trademarks. Yeah, you're using the same name, but it's not the real Ring of Honor. And I saw recently today, I'm not the only one who felt that way. Apparently, Kerry Silkin, the former owner of Ring of Honor, is less than thrilled with how Ring of Honor is being treated. There's no distinct roster. Ring of Honor original talent like the Kingdom or Dalton Castle, they're used the job out. The titles don't mean anything. When Joe just throws it down going, I don't want this thing anymore. Max is defending single-handedly the tag titles, and he's beating teams. Like, he's probably going to successfully defend it at Full Gear. And if he does, then that's 2 pay-per-views that he's successfully defended it single-handedly. Like, you're not adding value to this. And I really don't feel that Ring of Honor is being viewed by Tony Khan other than it's the equivalent of AEW Dark and Elevation behind a paywall, like you said, Shad. And the problem is, not a lot of people are probably paying for it, and I think that's a problem. That's why you're seeing more Ring of Honor on AEW TV, because they're like, please look at us, please. And everybody's like, we're not interested. And that's hurting them. I really never thought it was a good idea to relaunch Ring of Honor without a distinct plan, without a distinct roster, without a TV deal. And it has not panned out. And that was a disaster last night when Joe's putting the belt down and you've made nobody. So you've literally said this title's worthless. I'm going for a world title, but I don't need to keep it. Like, it's not like with Impact where you option C, where you have to turn in the X Division title if you're the champion to get a world title shot. You're not doing that. You're just throwing it down going, I don't want this piece of tin anymore. I want the world title. It made no sense.
I hear you there. And it is a great point. Burying your title on your own product, it's just hard to justify. No matter who you are or what you think about the match itself or the storyline. I think that's fascinating. Now let's talk about something more exciting. Let's talk about the women's division real quick.
Oh man,
I'm stoked about it. I
loved everything about this. Yeah,
we have Julia Hart and Red Velvet, who I think Red Velvet deserves more time. I think Julia Hart does as well. And then the real story is, again, post match though, this is on the positive side. Sky Blue and Julia Hart is good storytelling. We've been begging for weeks for AEW to tell stories in the women's division. This has nothing to do with title belts. This has nothing to do with anything other than hatred or jealousy or whatever you want to call it. A pure built rivalry, not at the top of the division and not at the bottom of the division, in the middle of the division, between two young talents that can both go and are exciting and charismatic. That I'm excited about. And then having Red Velvet in the mix in the match last night, I enjoyed as well. Red deserves more time. This isn't about that. This is about Julia Hart and Sky Blue. And the red blue thing, the irony is not lost on me. But we've been begging. Tell us stories in the women's division. This is something I want to see 100%. Anthony, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was something where when Red Velvet came out, I was like, I forgot she still works there because I don't remember the last time we actually saw her. Like, legitimate on a Dynamite. Like, I can't recall when the last time we saw her. It was a decent match, but again, this is the problem that I think AEW has in a lot of situations where they'll have somebody in an angle and they'll have them face somebody you don't see on a regular basis, and it kind of gives it a way of going, okay, well, you know, this is like a job situation, and it's a shame because I think Red Velvet deserves better than that. But again, like you said, the story is the Julie Hart, Sky Blue thing. And they're building it. And I think that's a smart move. That is a constant criticism that AEW really doesn't respect the women's division. It's plagued them for a long time. So them giving a little bit more time to it, I'm hoping it pans out. And I'm hoping this is not just, flash of the in the pan type situation where they're like, we're going to do it for now, but we're not sticking with this. This is a temporary thing. Like, you really need to get behind it and to be successful with it. So I'm hoping that's the direction it goes. It is a kind of a weird type of storyline, but if done right, it could elevate some people.
100%. And Shad, I know you have thoughts on this one too. What are your thoughts on the Julia Hart Sky Blue thing, as well as the match last night?
I mean, the match was solid. I agree to Anthony's point. Red Velvet is a spectacular talent that they have on the roster. There's a reason why they had her initially with Jade in that tag team match with Cody and Shaq, and she was aligned with Jade in the baddies and was kind of Jade's main rival within the TBS title that they didn't touch fully on as I would want to, but that's neither here or there. I do like this. I feel like the TBS title and what Chris Statlander has is also going to be intertwined in between this feud with Sky Blue and Julia Hart. And that's where I'm ready. And I think there's going to be a swerve to it. And that's what I'm most intrigued by. I feel like these group of women, the Julia Hart, the Sky Blue, the Chris Statlander, the Willow, I feel like their story amongst each other is what AEW is missing with their women's division. And it's what's missing probably in a lot of rivalries for them on weekly television is a concise story that goes week by week by week. And I feel like it's going to lead to Chris Statlander going heel. That's what I initially always wanted. I feel like Chris Statlander is kind of the egotistic person in here where she wants everybody to kind of be cool with her, and she's gonna maybe get into some Jedi mind tricks from Julia Hart where it might cause Chris to kind of go crazy and turn on Sky Blue and Willow and look more of a heel. That's what I'm hoping for. But all in all, man, I like it. I think Julia Hart has an aura to her, a stage presence, a presentation that's great. I think Sky Blue is very underrated. I think Chris Statlander is great. And yeah, man, this storyline is better than, besides the character work that we see from Tony Storm and Sheeta, it's more of a solid, consistent storyline than what we see in the AEW Women's division for the AEW Women's title. So I hope they continue that and they build more of a storyline for Sheeta and Storm as well. But AEW's Women's division is progressing. I'm very critical on them, and I'm happy to see the progress week by week.
I agree, and it's funny because, like, in the words of the great WWE/WWF back in the day, they're starting to get it right. They're starting to figure it out. It's just it is what it is. Like where you're close, not there yet, but we gotta also shout out improvement when you see it live. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Okay, with that, we've got the main event left to cover as well as throwback, and we're short on time. Anthony Manzano, you're awesome in the comment section. I apologize though, we do not have time to discuss those ones. Let's talk about Jay White and Mark Briscoe. I can't go without saying how great Mark Briscoe is. Bell to bell, it's no joke every single time. And then you have Jay White in there, and the interest built on the Devil storyline as well as the Max run in late in the show. Shad, how'd you like the main event?
I liked it. I mean, bell for bell was a solid match. I always love seeing Mark Briscoe on my TV screen. Been a fan of him for years upon years. So definitely great to see him. I'm loving the work that Jay White is doing. And yeah, I mean, we covered a lot of it already in regards to that final segment. I like the curveball that we have with the Max segment, with them attacking the Acclaim and, kind of seeing what is geared to it, kind of leaves, well, I guess they're not really aligned to Max, and it makes you question who it may be. So, hey, man, I'm glad that they're playing on the Devil thing a little bit more now. It kind of took a little bit of a pause and park motion, but now we're driving with it. We're going into the pay-per-view time, so all is well. And yeah, it's pretty solid.
I agree 100%. And I mean, personally, just want to know, right? But that's what I actually love about it. Don't tell me right away. Make me think about it. Make us all think about it, like as we have, right? Anthony, you've got an article coming out about it.
It's got to be a slow
burn.
I
mean? We've all thought about it. Now, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're asking for all the time. And, like we spoke about in the Julia Hart Sky Blue rivalry, this is what we're asking for. This make us have to think a little bit. Mm-hmm. Predictability is probably the worst ability in pro wrestling booking, I would say, right?
Absolutely.
Availability is the best ability. And while we're on puns, I just figured I'd throw that out there, but not the point. Let's talk about it. Is Throwback Thursday. Let's talk about our throwback topic of the evening. And speaking of wild booking decisions, the wildest one of them all.
Mm-hmm.
The Monty Screwjob, as I like to call it, Monty Python and the Screwjob, up there in French Canada. The Montreal Screwjob, the Hitman, Bret Hart, the excellence of execution, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be, against the Heartbreak Kid himself, the away team, up in Montreal, his home territory. You got Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, two of the best to ever do it in their lives. What more could we ask for? How about the creation of the Mr. McMahon character? You must be joking. I don't know if there's anything more impactful on the product we see today than this very night in this very moment. Personally, I've got more than enough feelings about it, but Anthony, I got to toss this one to you first.
Mm-hmm.
Break the whole thing down for me, boss.
Okay. At this time, WWF was losing the ratings war to WCW. Vince McMahon signed Bret Hart to a 20-year contract. Nobody else had that. As time went on, Vince realized he couldn't afford to honor that contract. Had a conversation with Bret. They were going to let him out, and Bret would have a negotiation with WCW. But Vince would do it in a way to make Bischoff think he was in a bidding war. In truth, Bischoff was bidding with himself. So Bret ended up with a lot of money to go to WCW. He didn't want to leave, but essentially Vince is like, I can't afford this. So the problem was there was backstage heat with Shawn and Bret, which was building. Vince wanted Bret to lose to Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, at Survivor Series 97. Bret didn't want to lose. Now, there's been speculation. Bret didn't want to lose because it was in Canada. Bret has said, I didn't want to lose to Shawn. The interesting part is, in the midst of this feud, The Undertaker was roped into this too. I'm very curious of all the scenarios they threw out. A triple threat with The Undertaker in there, because The Undertaker would have taken the pinfall. He would have done what was best for the company. Bret's the son of a promoter. I love both Bret and Shawn, but I'm more of a Shawn guy. In my opinion, you're leaving. The time-honored tradition is you job on the way out. Whether you like the guy or not, it's not your title. You never actually won it. No one wins a title. The company anoints you as the representative of the company. So the whole thing, I didn't want to lose to Shawn. I've always had a problem with that. But this incident saved WWF because the Mr. McMahon character came out of this. As Vince came down and demanded the referee ring the bell in the middle of the ring while Shawn had Bret in his own finisher, the sharpshooter, the Mr. McMahon character was created, which eventually led to Austin versus McMahon, which that's what saved WWF. That's why we're in the bubble of success WWE has today. It all stems from that, because they could have went out of business against WCW. It was that close that they might have gone out of business. Now, WCW dropped the ball with Bret. I mean, that was a disaster, but WWF succeeded on this. This is one of those moments, and this is why there's still speculation to this day. Was Bret in on it? Was because the Wrestling with Shadows documentary was being filmed backstage. On camera, you see Bret spelling out WCW and destroying monitors. I understand the speculation with that, but after 26 years, if it was, either only Vince and Bret know that, and they're going to take it to their graves, or it's just wishful thinking. It really happened. But it really saved the company. Shawn was the heel, and, he embraced it, and for years said he wasn't in on it until he finally, came clean, and, Bret and Shawn made peace, which killed TNA too. That first Monday night when they tried to go head to head with that WWF,
Yeah.
They're like, oh, by the way, we're bringing Bret back, and we're opening with him and Shawn making peace in the ring. That was the end of the Monday Night War 2 with TNA.
That is an excellent point. And I think the most fascinating thing you brought up is this not only launched Mr. McMahon, Stone Cold Steve Austin came out the best of anyone in this.
You keep in mind, Bret built Austin with WrestleMania 13 with it, and they were teasing on air Bret feuding with Vince, because it was the first time Vince wasn't just the announcer.
Remember, Bret cursed on TV inside the steel cage, to your point.
So if you want to say Bret saved WWF in a weird way, but
and then bounced.
The reason that the screw job really happened was Vince didn't want him to show up on WCW TV with the WWF title, because Medusa, Alundra Blaze, showed up on Nitro and dropped the women's title and said it was trash. Now, the irony, of course, and we covered this on a previous throwback, is Ric Flair showed up on WWF TV with the WCW title.
No problem there. Yeah, no worries. Shad, I got to get your thoughts on this one too. Like, memories of number one, just that Survivor Series and the moment itself, as well as your thoughts on the whole thing.
I'm biased. I'm a Shawn Michaels guy. I know a lot of people are Brett guys, and I can definitely feel the empathy and frustration that a person who's a Bret Hart fan and what Bret Hart was going through. I mean, kind of getting like, screwed over in your home nation during that, in a not going out in a blaze of glory like that, kind of looking, kind of like one of those situations you see in the NFL nowadays where people always will question the refs taking games out and ways to go and saying things are scripted. Well, this is obviously scripted, but as a hometown fan and him being the hometown guy, it kind of has that sort of feeling to it, right? Like you feel like your team should have won, but they got messed over. But everything is a happy accident at the end of the day. To Anthony's point, I mean, a lot of good occurred after that for the WWE standpoint. I mean, you have a person like Vince McMahon who became that evil genius of a character on screen and kind of being that sleazeball of a owner of the WWE, and what we do have with him in Austin. And I mean, it made. I mean, Shawn Michaels, man, I think he's one of the goats for that reason. He's the tailor the coin, the tailor the coin, two sides of it. Like he's able to play that bad guy within there. But it was a crazy moment, man. Like I remember watching that with my older brother, and he was just like in awe and shocked about it because he was a big Bret Hart fan growing up when he was a kid too. So yeah, man, it's crazy. It's one of those, like, it just changed the landscape. And obviously what we saw with Bret not having a successful career in WCW, kind of having what occurred with him towards the end of his career and whatnot. It's one of those like what if moments of things had changed, or you never know. But this is professional wrestling. This is kind of what occurs to it.
100%. Anything can happen, and it's so fascinating to me, though. You think about it, right? Son of a promoter, guy that grew up in the business, like, and not only that, arguably the greatest wrestling school of all time, the Hart Dungeon. You think about the amount of people that came out of there, right? Like, of all people for it to happen to. I feel like that's something that, like, we don't even, you almost forget, like, oh no, wait, they did it to not just like anybody. Super talent. They just a Bret Hart
to the guy, man.
Like, the irony is, and Bret said it in his book, he thought that they were going to screw him. Like, he was very suspicious that they were going to do it. And I believe Shawn said it in his book, that he's saying that Bret suggested the sharpshooter, which I think led a lot of credence to why people thought Bret might have been in on it. One of the most
probably did suggest the sharpshooter with a reversal.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
That's logical.
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to be there. And I think a lot of people forget it. They all remember the screw job itself, but if you went back and actually watched the match itself,
it's a banger.
It's a masterclass by two of the goats, and Shawn is the goat of goats.
I
but
agree.
One of the most famous, to me, one of the most famous sound bites of the Attitude Era is Bret screwed Bret. Like, it's like, Vince is known for two things: you're fired and Bret screwed Bret. Like, they are the most iconic of words, and that really propelled the Mr. McMahon character to a whole nother level.
I wonder if we don't look back on it differently, though, if he doesn't just hit him with the chair like 40 times at that WrestleMania match 20 years later.
I can't take bumps. I'm getting out of all these years of frustration. I mean, like, realistically, like,
you laid in those chair shots.
If Bret didn't have the concussions and couldn't, honestly, if Bret was able to go, I think the match would have been him and Shawn.
Oh, that would have been insane.
I think that would have been, I think that would have been the match.
I mean, I watched him go an hour at WrestleMania 12, and I was, 5 years old. But it was my first ever wrestling show, and I'll never forget looking up at the
hell of a first wrestling show.
Like, it was
mine's was some house show in
Taker and Diesel is WM12.
It's an hour plus. It went to sudden death.
It is. It went to sudden death overtime. The boyhood dream was achieved, and I'll never forget it. It was one of the best days of my life. But we do with that, by the way, we're out of time. We got to go home. On behalf of Wrestling Republic, thank you everybody for tuning in. If you haven't liked and subscribed already, please do check out all of our other shows too. Wrestling Off the Air, sold separately, Take It to the Table, all of it. Check us out at Wrestling Republic on Instagram. And on behalf of Anthony, Shad, and Clark Taylor, thank you so much for tuning in. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow, earlier in the day, 3 hours before start time today. It'll be noon Pacific. That's 8 p.m. over in the UK. That's 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central, and of course, 9 a.m. in Hawaii. Have a good one.